So we did not have a day 8 notes. We just went over the homework during day 8, and we went over your quiz during day 8, and we highlighted the notes from day 7. We skipped the day 8 homework, as you recall, just because we were so short on time yesterday with the short schedule. Like I said, you might see the day 8 worksheet pop back up later in the chapter, but for now it's just hanging out on my desk. Today, jumping right into day 9, we are going to start setting up word problems using charts. These are super fun. You're going to love it. So you should have all of this at the top of your notes, right? Yeah, you don't have the chart. We'll make enough charts. I don't think you need to put a chart. But that's just sort of showing you the type of chart we're going to be setting up. So here are some formulas you'll need. If we're talking about the cost, it's the number of items times the cost per item gives you the total cost. If we're talking about the value of something, it's the number of the items times the value. That equals the overall value. If you're working, the number of hours worked times the number of hours worked times how much you're making per hour is your income. And we use charts like this to set them up. So some information will go here, like the number of hours, the time worked. And you'll see each piece of information we have goes in a certain box. And then the boxes come together to make the overall information make a little more sense. So without actually looking at an example, it's kind of hard to explain what goes in the boxes. So let's just jump into part A, and then you'll sort of see what these charts mean. So this says Missy spent $8.40 for several pencils costing 20 cents each and some notebooks costing $1.20 each. She bought 7 more pencils than notebooks. How many notebooks did she buy? So we are going to set up a chart. The top line of our chart will be all about pencils. The bottom will be all about notebooks. And this is basically just a way to help organize the information so that we can write an equation. So go ahead and draw the chart. You need 4 columns, 2 rows. The first row is pencils. The second row is notebooks. All right, so now we're just going to use the other columns to piece together the information that we already know. So do we know how many pencils or how many notebooks were bought? No, that's going to be our variable, right? You can tell because the question ends, how many notebooks did she buy? How many notebooks did she buy? So I'm going to put my variable right here. Now, what do I know about the number of pencils? 7 more than notebooks. So if n is notebooks, 7 plus n is the number of pencils. Okay? Questions on that column? Second column is the price. Do I know the price for pencils or notebooks? What do I know? 20 cents each for pencils, $1.20 each for notebooks. So that information we already have. Be careful when it gives it to you like this. If you don't put a decimal, that's like $20. Okay, so be real careful. 20 cents goes after the decimal. Now we're going to write an expression to represent the cost. So if you want to find the cost in pencils, you multiply these two together. Which normally when one of them has 2 terms, we put it second in parentheses, we'll have to distribute. The notebooks is a little easier. It's just the number of items times the cost per item. In this case, again, we usually put the number part first, then the variable, the coefficient in the front of the variable. Now, there's one more piece of information that I did not put anywhere in my chart. She spent $8.40. So if you take the total cost of the pencils here, plus the total cost of the notebooks here, that should equal $8.40. So we basically just use the chart to organize the information so that we can write an equation. And then once we write the equation, we can solve it. So from the chart, we wrote this equation. Now we have to solve this equation. I'm going to drop the zeros because I don't really need them. I also distributed this. Now, yesterday we learned a trick to get rid of all the decimals. Yeah, so see how each number after I distributed, you could really do it before you distribute. Just make sure you only multiply this guy. Don't distribute the 10. Just multiply by the number in the front and then you distribute them together. But I'm going to distribute now. The reason I did 10 and not 100 is because all the numbers that had 2 places after the decimal, all of them had that 0 that dropped off. So I really only need 1 jump in each number. Okay, so multiply through by 10. Now, if you're like, I don't like the multiply through by 10, I don't want to multiply through by 10, I am confident working with decimals, I have my trusty calculator, that's fine. You don't have to do it this way. I just use a calculator a lot less than most people, and this is how it makes the most sense to do it without the calculator. All right, so we have some like terms. Once we move all the decimals, again, multiplying by 10, you just do a jump and a jump and a jump and a jump. 2n plus 12n equals 14n plus 14 equals 84. I have no idea what that sound is. All right, what do I do next? What do I do next? Subtract 14 from both sides. And then you divide both sides by 14. And n equals 5, but n represented what? Notebooks. So 5 notebooks. What are your questions? Questions? Anyone need more time? All right, here is B. So this says Rudy has $2.55 in dimes and quarters. He has 8 more dimes than quarters. How many quarters does he have? So I'm going to set up a chart. What are the 2 things we're talking about? Dimes and quarters. So I'm going to have a row for dimes and a row for quarters. It's going to be the number, the value, the total. All right. How should we start? I usually look at what am I looking for? What's my unknown? How many quarters? So let's just use Q for quarters. Now, I don't want to also use D for dimes. We only want one variable in these. So what do I know about the number of dimes? 8 more dimes than quarters. 8 more is Q plus 8. Perfect. Now, I don't see any information about the value. So here's where your money skills come into play. What's a dime worth? 10 cents. What's a quarter worth? 25 cents. If this is something you struggle with, and when you stopped learning how to count money in 4th grade and you thought, whew, good, that's gone. It's not, okay? So hopefully you know these. If not, go home, talk to your parents, work through it, okay? So however many dimes we have, each one is worth 10 cents. So I need to multiply these two together to get the total value in dimes. However many quarters we have, we multiply that by the value of the quarter, and that'll tell me how much money I have in quarters. And what do I know about the values put together? It equals $2.55. That's the equation that I need to solve here. All right, questions on the chart. These problems have like 2 phases, like the organizing phase and the solving phase. So we're done organizing the information. Anyone have questions? Now we actually go through and do the more algebra stuff. I mean, it's all algebra. This is algebra class. But the more solving the equation. All right, so I can distribute first, then multiply by 100, or multiply by 100 first, then distribute. I distributed first. This one's easy enough to do in your head. Again, if you multiply by 100 here, don't multiply the Q and the 8 by 100, just the 0.10 on the outside. If you distribute it and then distribute it, like if you multiply these by 100 and then distribute what you already multiplied by 100, those are getting multiplied too many times. So just be real careful on that. Now I can multiply by the 100. That causes 2 jumps. There's 2 zeros and a 100. 2 jumps. So what is the coefficient with my first Q? 10. Yeah, I have 1 jump, 2 jumps. So 10Q. Here I would get 80. Here I would get 25. Here I would get 255. Good. Now what? Combine the like terms. Good. Then what? Subtract the 80 from both sides. What's 255 minus 80? Very good. 175. Divide by 35. Five. So there are 5 what? Quarters. Now, sometimes the question will say like how many dimes, how many quarters. Then you have to go back and actually figure out the dimes as well. But this question only asks us for the one piece of information, so we're done. What are your questions? All right. All right, so Fritz, I guess is the name. Fritz makes $4 an hour working after school and $5 an hour working on Saturdays. Last week, he made $52.50 working a total of 12 hours. How many hours did he work on Saturday? So, it's all work, which kind of feels weird, but there's 2 different values that he's getting paid for the work. So you have to separate them. After school work is one amount. Saturdays is another amount. All right, so I'm going to do number of hours here, pay here, and then total income here, and I'm going to use that information to write my equation. Now, on this one, you kind of get to pick which one you want to make the variable. Again, I like to go with whatever they're asking me about. They're asking me about Saturdays, so I'm going to make that my variable. Okay, now, what do I know about hours after school? No, the hours. $4 an hour is going to go here. $5 is going to go here.
12 hours.
He worked. That's the total. So these two need to add to what?
$5. $52.
Is it the income?
What?
This is how many hours he worked.
12.
So these two numbers need to add to 12.
Oh.
So 6 and 6, we're done with the problem. We don't even need to write an equation. Let me give you some scenarios. What if this was 1? What would this be?
5. No, wait. 11.
11. What if this one was 2? This one would be.
Wait.
If it's 2, it's going to be 10.
What if this was 3? This would be 9. What are you doing in your head right now?
Adding.
You are subtracting.
What?
You are taking the total minus however many hours are here. This is tricky. I often have to stop and question this as well. So again, when you know the total of something, the total hours worked, or the total pieces of fruit, or whatever your total is, and you're looking for one of them, that unknown has to be taken away from the total to find the other one. And if you get stuck, think about what I just did. Okay, if this was 1, how would I find this? If this was 2, how would I find this? If this was 3, how would I find this? Put actual numbers in there and try to see what makes sense, okay? Now, we already talked about 4 and 5.
Oh. We did?
Yeah, that's just how much he makes per hour.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And then we multiplied these two columns to get his income. So 4 goes in the front since we're distributing. 5 goes before the X since it's a actual number. All right. So I am going to add the incomes to equal the total that he made during that time period. Okay? Everyone feeling okay with this equation? Too much talking in the back today. All right, how would I start this? You have to distribute the 4. So 4 times 12, 48. 4 times minus x, minus 4x, plus the 5 equals 5250. Now, on ones like this, I don't know if I'd multiply through. I mean, the decimal's only in one spot. It's kind of easy to just do, right? If you want to, it's up to you. If you don't, that's fine too. So when I combine like terms, I have negative 4x plus 5x. It's like 5 minus 4. Keep the x, so 1x or just x And then I need to subtract the 48 from both sides. When you do that, you get 4.5. So he worked 4.5 hours on Saturday. It doesn't ask you how much he worked after school, so you don't need to do that part. If it did, you would do 12 minus 4.5, and that would be the number of hours worked after school.
Yeah.
What are your questions? All right, D. 65 members of the Medical Society attended the annual dinner of the society. An equal number of non-members also attended. Tickets for non-members cost $10 more than tickets for members. If ticket sales totaled $4,095, how much did each ticket cost? So we have two items. What are we talking about?
Tickets for members and tickets for non-members.
So members and non-members. Good. So we're going to have how many of each, what they cost, and then the total for that particular type of ticket. Now, here we're looking for each type of ticket, right? So which one should I make the variable?
Members. But don't you?
Where did I get that?
65 members.
Oh, I just said the wrong thing. We're looking for how much each ticket costs. I thought we were looking for how many tickets. Where did this 65 come from? I totally missed that. It's right here. Duh, it's the first two words. Okay, so 65 members went. The same number of non-members went. So if 65 members went, 65 non-members went. So where's my variable going to be? In the price. So non-members cost $10 more. So I'll probably make this one the variable and then this one the variable plus M and M plus 10. Good. Sorry, that's why it's tricky when, and I think that's exactly why teachers do it, when it's not written out like in numbers. Breeze right over it. All right, so 65 times the cost of the member ticket, and then 65 times the cost of the non-member ticket, but you're going to have to distribute there. Now, these totals, total number of cost of members, total number of costs for non-members, should equal what?
4,000.
So I'm going to have 65M plus 65M plus 10. That's my equation. What are your questions? All right, so how will I start to solve this? Distribute the 65. So 65 times M and 65 times 10. Very good. Now I can combine my M. 65 and 65 is what? 130. M plus 650 equals 4,095.
That's how much all of the tickets are.
All right, now what? Subtract 650 from both sides. What do you get? What is it? 45, yes?
Oh, that's it.
All right, and then divide both of those by 130. So on the left, we're just left with M. Anyone have M's value for me? 26.5, which when we're talking about money is 26.50. That's the cost for members. If you look back at your chart, the cost for non-members was M plus 10. So 36.50. When they ask you for both, you need both or you're not going to get all your points. Okay, so pay attention to what they're asking you for. What? Any questions? All right, we gotta write our summary. So today, what did we learn?
How to solve problems with charts.
Yes, today we learned I'm going to say how to set up the equations. You already knew how to solve the equations. So today we learned how to set up equations using charts. All right, here comes your homework.